But the Orange Revolution, like you said, this kind of kicks off this wave. I mean, this is in the first wave of what is called the color revolutions that kind of sweep through Eastern and Central Europe. Now some people kind of, I would say that universities in the US still teach these as very much spur of the moment, the people rising up, spontaneous, democratic, the cries of the people yearning to be free. Yeah. But when we say color revolution, what we mean is that actually it's Western backed. And the idea is that, the West comes in, they've been there for a couple years, usually via NGOs or other kind of partnerships. Civil
society groups, yeah.
Civil society groups, yeah. Sometimes like they are fronting their own there. Sometimes they're just backing domestic groups or university groups or whatever in different countries. And they use that as a pretext to kind of drum up, like fake, I don't know how to say it. It's just like it's fake democratic support for their preferred candidates, or fake democratic support to give pretext for new elections, or overturning an election, or something to that effect.
Well, and it's kind of evilly brilliant. I mean, look, they tap into genuine grievances. Otherwise, it wouldn't really go anywhere, right? But they're selective about it. If you want something, you've got the infrastructure there, and then you just turn the heat up, and it can work. And if you're getting what you want, you keep it on simmer, and no revolution's going to happen. But, what is civil society in these countries? I mean, it's starting to become, it's nice to see that finally this whole notion of civil society, it's, at least on some parts of it, is finally starting to become a dirty word. Like when you hear that word, something stinky is going on.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
or,
back then,
people are remembering that it's like the third, the third part of, the governance, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what is it? It's essentially elites, local elites, usually younger, college educated from good families who join. And civil society is basically funded by Western governments, Western oligarchs, and local oligarchs who want to be in cahoots with the Western oligarchs and the whole globalized system. That's who funds most of it. So they are not but they get to pretend that they represent the people.
Yes.
And they never represent the people. Some of them might do good things, environmental, whatever, but they're not. It's actually anti-democratic when you think about it, because they talk about civil society now as if it represents the people, not even like elections or anything. It's like, well, civil society is for or against this. What does that mean? It means NGOs funded by the rich and powerful.
Yeah, you mentioned Soros, and people probably have heard of Open Society. That's like one of his biggest. He's got 1 billion organizations himself, but Open Society is, of course, like one of the largest. And when you see that little logo on the step and repeat at the little banquet you're going to or whatever, take heed.
What's funny about Soros is the left in this country, up until, I don't know, maybe around Obama's time, the left was pretty openly, as I remember, maybe like the more kind of harder left or something, but even like the Amy Goodman left, I guess is what I want to say. We're very open about talking about Soros and all of the damage he was doing in the developing world and former communist countries. It was, I mean, that's where most of this was coming from. And then kind of the LaRouche, right? LaRouche started glomming onto him, but the left didn't really care about that back then because it was also true. And, to be honest, like for me, when Yasha and I kind of got that scoop that we got screwed on about the Tea Party backed by the Kochs, it was obvious to us when we saw the first thing started. We're like, well, this looks like some oligarch thing from Russia, like these things don't spontaneously happen. And now that's like, I think it's a lot more widely held, but for us coming from Russia, it was just easier to see. And from the stuff, Soros did. I mean, in 2003, I was in Georgia, the Rose Revolution. So that was just before the orange one. This was like,
rose colored. Yeah.
Right. And Soros was big behind that. I mean, he was the major funder of it, I would say, along with like the NED and some of those groups.
Well, Pierre Omidyar gets involved in a lot of this stuff as well.
He does later
he's a
on.
Soros type figure. Yeah. Especially in Ukraine later on.
Exactly. So the Orange Revolution, basically what happens, Kuchma, who went from being pro-Russian to then pro-West and getting all his support from the West in 2004, he couldn't run again. So he backs Yanukovych, his prime minister. Yeah. And that, again, now they're back on the pro-Russian side. Kuchma's son-in-law, Viktor Pinchuk, is now like the number 1 or 2 oligarch in Ukraine. He backs Yanukovych in the pro-Russian side. Why is that name important? Because later he becomes a major funder of the Maidan Revolution. He's with the West, and he's a big funder, huge funder of the Clinton Foundation. These guys just go back and forth over and over, right?
BPD ass politicians in this country.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love you.
They always come back for vengeance too.
I don't know. I'm so fucked up. I'm crazy. I don't know.
So the protests were huge. The grievances were real. I mean, look, there was a lot of enormous amount of corruption. Kuchma didn't quite really get what he was getting into. I mean, the U.S. says you got to let these if you crack down on U.S. civil society groups, you become an enemy. Yeah. So you got to let them be there. But if you let them grow there, then you're screwing yourself.
Well,
so
look at
Belarus.
Look at Belarus, but look at Belarus, Russia, and Hungary. I mean, I have no love for any of the leaders of those countries, but honest, like it was taken sort of as like, they were doing this kind of like fascist move by cracking down on Western-backed NGOs and civil society organizations, when in fact it's one of the most rational things you can do because those groups are there for a very specific purpose. That's practically stationing troops in your country. I mean, that is what it is.
Yeah, totally.
They are not there. And when people sort of bleat about this kind of stuff, it belies like the most sort of like simplistic childlike view about how American power projection works. America does not have these groups in Russia because they are so concerned about gay rights in Russia or parliamentary whatever in fucking Hungary. No, they are there so that if we ever need to maybe make a little change in scenery or maybe twist things around a little bit, we can do that. It's power projection, plain and simple. It is nothing to do with the causes that they purportedly fight for or against.
I mean, look, the leaders in our country, like the centrist Solokorda establishment, were saying that Russia buying Facebook, Buff Bernie memes was the equivalent of Pearl Harbor. So can you imagine if Russia had like 50 NGOs monitoring our elections, buying friends everywhere, promoting whatever their version of NATO is, that they have with Kazakhstan. Like it's the whole thing. It's really ridiculous. Yeah. And you have to be, there's just, people are just so naive out here about how it works. You just,
I mean, look, America's greatest export and what they bank on at home is propaganda. I mean, the U.S. propaganda machine is so fucking strong. It's so strong. And that's on top of, whatever other Zizekian trash can we're all eating from.
Ideology.
But on top of that, and we can talk about this when we talk about, current, possible conflicts with the U.S. and Russia, but like even critics of America buy America's own bullshit to a certain degree. And it's real difficult to like powerful. Break out of. It's really, really powerful stuff. And it's really